Our group did a replication project of a study done by Ruth Ann Rayfield, Brooke Walker, yours, Grace, Sadie Levitt, and Stephanie Philippa. Our group included Kristen, Tracy, Paige, Jenna, and me, Lisa. This study implemented a points, no points contingency. This points contingency acts as a way of assigning a value to assignments that could be used for higher reinforcements, such as extra points. The amount of points for each assignment are known to the participants in addition to knowledge whether points would be accessible during that assignment. The points contingency demonstrated the value of reinforcement for completion of work. There were 3 other studies that examined this points contingency. The first study wanted to see if there was a relationship between class attendance and the amount of points available in class that day. It was found that students were more likely to attend class when there was an opportunity to earn more points. The next study involved the completion of homework of a child with autism spectrum disorder. Points were paired with positive reinforcement were given out for homework completion. It was found that the points contingency increased work performance. The final study reinforced homework completion and accuracy of spelling. Results showed that the points contingency had a positive impact on both spelling homework completion and accurate rates. Our study evaluated the effect of a points versus no points contingency on submission of homework assignment and quiz performance in an undergrad level psychology course. 31 graduate students, 26 women and 4 men, pursuing Masters of Science degrees in the Behavior Analysis and Therapy Department at Southern Illinois University. It was found that the mean percentage of homework assignments submitted was higher in the points weeks. I will now hand it over to Paige.
The behavioral definition for homework assignment completion is defined as answering all questions in the chapter guided notes that had been assigned by the teacher, who was Tracy. And these guide notes were found through the Cooper textbook, which we accessed through the Pearson website. The duration of this behavior occurs for a minimum of 30 minutes, but has no maximum time limit. And the duration recording begins once the first question has been answered and ends when all the notes have been completed and the assignment's been submitted to the teacher, again, who was Tracy. An example of this behavioral definition would be a participant submitting a fully filled out completion of guided notes and emailing them to the teacher. A non-example of this would be if a participant were to submit the guided notes without filling in all of the blanks throughout the assignment. So our replication study, throughout it, we used 2 alternating treatment designs simultaneously. And we had analyzed the effects of a points versus no points contingency on the submission of guided notes and the weekly quiz performances. Baseline data was taken for the chapters 7 through 12, and these This data was included the first attempt on each Cooper quiz. And each quiz and baseline was taken before any intervention had taken place. Once the guided notes were submitted, there was no feedback given by the teacher before the test was taken. And now Tracy will begin to talk about the participants within the study.
Thanks, Paige. So our replication included 4 participants and 1 student, myself, taking the role of teacher. All participants were women pursuing their master's degree in applied behavior analysis and were enrolled online in a required course at Ball State University. As the teacher, I randomly assigned the participants to either the teal group or the purple group. I then created a table assigning the groups to a points or no points condition. This was mapped out prior to the start of the intervention and was posted for all participants to see, which is something that happened in the original study. So we chose guided notes from the Cooper book. Oh, so there's our graph or our table. We chose guided notes from the Cooper book, which was the required text for the course as our homework assignments. I provided minimal written feedback on these notes. My feedback was more directing participants to where they could review the information and correct any mistakes. And then I assigned a percentage grade to each participant, regardless of whether it was a points or no points week for them. So you can see, oh, sorry, Jenna, can we go back one slide? Thanks. So you can see here where we have the teal group and the purple group, and then you have me, the teacher on the far right. Jenna assigned me randomly to points, no points conditions for the purpose of graphing, because we all had the individual graphing assignment that was due mid-semester. And without this, I wouldn't have had anything to submit for that assignment. So you can go to the next slide, thank you. So we chose an edible as our reinforcer during a points week. Each participant was responsible for self-administering their reinforcement. Students submitted guided notes to the teacher, me, by Sunday at 11:59. Excuse me, and the graded assignments were returned the next day. So quizzes were taken, and the first attempt score was, there was a screenshot taken and that was submitted via email. And that was due to me by Wednesday at 11:59. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenna, and she's going to discuss our graphs.
Oh, Kristen's going to go first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kristen. My apologies. Kristen, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, each participant calculated their own IOA data, as well as Tracy, the designated teacher in our study. IOA was calculated by dividing the number of trial agreements by the total number of trials, and that number was then multiplied by 100 to determine the percentage of agreement between the participant and the teacher. The IOA was collected for sessions 9, 10, 14, and 15, and there was a requirement to be 80% or higher between raters. Tracy, the teacher for our group, provided an answer key to each participant to score their guided notes, so we were all using the same answer key. Next slide, Jenna. As you can see in the table provided, the lowest IOA percentage among the participants was 85%, and the rest was 100. Next slide. Following the study, we discussed the student satisfaction questionnaire as a group, and each participant, minus Tracy, provided our answers. There was a 1 to 5 rating scale, with 1 being strongly disagree and 5 being strongly agree. The 4 questions included were, number 1, were the comments provided by the teacher helpful in increasing your understanding? And as a group, the average score was a 2.3. Therefore, the comments didn't seem to influence how well we understood the subject matter at hand. The second question was, were you motivated to hand in assignments when it was a points week for your group? And as an average, the group said 1. As a group, we discussed that although points were given from the teacher for turning in the guided notes, it was not motivating enough for us to turn in the assignments on time. The third question was, did you benefit from having assignments due and graded before you took the quiz? As a group, we averaged a score of 4.5. We agreed that completing the guided notes helped increase our knowledge of the subject matter prior to completing the Cooper quiz. And lastly, did you find the notes helpful for taking the quiz? And we all strongly agreed. Completion of the guided notes allowed each of us to ensure we understood the chapter that was being discussed that week. And overall, we felt that completing the guided notes homework benefited us individually for our quiz scores and understanding of the subject matter. However, points versus no points for completion did not maintain or influence our behavior of homework completion. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jenna.
So there are a few things I have to point out in regards to our graphs. First of all, we did an alternating treatment design. We did 2 alternating treatment designs simultaneously. Normally, you would have these 2 graphs combined into 1 graph, but due to the fact that our lines didn't vary, it was going to be very difficult to determine points contingency versus no points contingency. So after talking with Dr. Sieverling extensively, we just determined that it was better to display these data points separately. Second thing to point out is that although we took baseline data as a group, so we completed the Cooper quizzes without completing guided notes. Although we did that and we have the data, the original study did not display baseline data, and so therefore we did not display baseline data when creating our graphs. So this particular slide shows the results from the teal group. So what this means is that during points contingency weeks, 50% of the homework assignments were completed. The teal group had 2 participants, so this means that during the first, second, and third week of points contingency, only one of the participants turned in guided notes. Then in the following graph, for no points contingency, the same thing for the first 4 graphs, and then for weeks 5 and 6, neither of their participants turned in guided notes, and then again back up to 50%. For the purple group, you see that for the first 2 weeks, only 1 participant turned in guided notes, and then both, and then 0 for the points contingency, and then you can see for no points contingency, 50%, and then 100. It is important to remember that at the beginning of the study, we were told that completing the notes was optional, but that points versus no points week, regardless of your points versus no points week. So even if you were able to earn points that week, the notes were still optional. The motivator was that our reward was an edible. However, we found that our motivator really, that was not a strong enough enforcement. So then we took data on our quiz grades that on the quiz grades that we submitted to Tracy, our teacher. Even though we were required to submit only 100% for the course, we submitted the first trial of the quiz to Tracy to record for this study. So as you can see for the teal group, on a points week, they all received 100% at their first attempt. And then for the no points week, most of the time they received 100% with a score of 90 at one point, or at 2 different points, sorry. Same for the purple group. The scores were relatively high all the way across for the first attempt. Our groups saw a ceiling effect, so we couldn't score higher than a 100. So that just means that our study, our study was affected by the ceiling effect so that our scores could not go higher than 100. For the discussion, the teacher provided feedback regardless of if the guided notes were turned in on time. And so that actually did influence our completion. For example, our notes were due on Sunday, the week of that the quiz was due on Thursday. But if you didn't turn your notes in to Tracy on time, she still provided that feedback. Completion of guided notes impacted behavior change versus feedback from the teacher. So our quiz grades obviously increased based on the fact that we completed the notes, not necessarily based on the fact that Tracy gave feedback. Reinforcement was not great enough to motivate behavior change based on the points or no points contingency. We had no way to control whether the enforcer was self-administered only when a person received the points or not. Lisa is going to discuss internal validity.
Okay, so internal validity, we had a lot of limitations. The first one that I would like to discuss is we had limited control on when people completed the assignment/test. So this means that we were not all in a sterile environment where you sat down and took the test and then it was done. So that control wasn't there. We didn't have control over whether you did it at midnight or 8 in the morning. The only requirement that our study put in place was they were due by a certain hour, and that's it, on a certain day. So this could definitely affect what's going on in the person's life, what time of day it is, whether your child's screaming in the background or your dog's barking, like in my case. So this could definitely affect how well people were able to do and not do. Like somebody in a totally sterile, quiet environment might have done better than somebody with a million distractions. Second, testing was not, oh, I just talked about that, sorry. So another limitation, as talked about before, was the reinforcement, which was not given necessarily on the basis of the points, no points contingency. So our study had limited reinforcement. So I'm going to hand it back to Jenna.
So for external validity, applying environments other than academia. So this study would not be able to be replicated outside of an academic setting. Participants needed to be all participants in the same class. So again, this would not work if the participants were involved in different classes. This study could be generalized to other academic texts. However, it cannot be generalized to non-academic texts. And there needs to be a certain number of people within the study to show a stronger size effect. So the original study had 30-ish people involved. We only had 4, so it is helpful to have more people. We hope you enjoyed our study. Thank you.